Hello and welcome to an exclusive hour-long programme with one of my favourite people ever. EP, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm lovely, because that's nice, isn't it? That people know EP means Elaine Paige.
I suppose my radio show has helped with the... with the EP bit, because I sort of said this is, it's EP here, and Elaine Paige on Sunday being the radio programme. So, yes, everybody's beginning to get it, that it's not Elvis Presley we're talking about, or Eva Peron, or Edith Piaf. It's me, it's EP.
How are you doing? Because you're such a trooper, you're always busy, you're always working, and you're always up to something. You've had such a great career like that. There aren't many people who have such consistent work.
I've been very fortunate, I suppose you could say, though I struggled, initially for several years, in fact, before Evita came along, which of course was the one that changed everything for me. Although the press hailed me as, the star overnight and all of that. Of course, overnight stardom came after, I don't know, something like 12 or 13 years of hard graft. But that was the one that altered everything for me, and I have been very lucky since Evita to have... things have just sort of come to me, really. None of it's ever been planned, I have to admit. And, of course, Cats that followed Evita after about a 6-month... rest, as you know, that resting thing that all us actors talk about. That came along by default, as everybody knows probably by now, because Judi Dench had injured her Achilles heel. In fact, she broke it, and there was just absolutely no way she was going to be able to get back to play Grisabella. And so Andrew rang me and asked me if I'd dig him out of a hole, basically. And what a hole to find myself... digging him out of, because it had that wonderful song Memory, and being the first to have sung that on stage or anywhere at all was an absolute thrill, and remains still, amazingly, after the thousands of times that I must have sung it on stage in various concerts all over the world. I still love it so much, and because it really has got that wonderful melody, and it's dramatic and passionate, and I never really tire of singing it, which I can't quite believe, but it's true. And I think also because of the years since I've sang it in the early 80s, Cats was, of course, 81. I think with life experience it perhaps has more depth to it now than it did when I initially sang it, or I'd like to think so anyway.
Have you put your finger on why you're here today and I'm talking to you? Because there are so many big stars in the West End in terms of their performance and their talent, but we mostly don't know their name. There's probably only a handful of people who we know from musical theatre who stand out. Why are you sat here and so many others aren't?
It's a good question. I have never been asked that before. Longevity is what you're talking about, and how does one achieve it? With a lot of hard work. I've been, as I said before, very fortunate that I've been offered some amazing musicals since Evita. Cats, Chess was written for me. Piaf was something that my agent suggested to me because I was looking to spread my wings a bit as an actress, and that afforded me the opportunity to do that, because it is a wonderful story, the life of Edith Piaf. Pam Gems had written this marvellous play, basically, that had smatterings of music in it, and I read the play and just couldn't wait to turn the page, excuse the pun, but I couldn't wait to see what happened in the end. I didn't know everything about Edith Piaf's life at the time, but having read Pam Gems's play, I knew that I wanted to play her, and so I bought the rights to the play and held them for 5 years, something like that, and found myself a producer, found myself a director, and managed to therefore play the role. And so that was something that sort of fell in my lap, really, through a suggestion from somebody else. I don't know how it is. I mean, it's just making decisions and hopefully making the right decisions for oneself. And I have been quite oh, I don't know how you say it, but I've made some good decisions. So I think that's part of how one manages to stay stay there doing what I love. Secondly, I think, to the way in which I was propelled into the public eye with Evita was pretty extraordinary and hasn't really occurred since, actually, in 30 years we're talking now, since Evita opened 30 years ago this year. That was a huge publicity machine, if you like, that sort of gathered pace all on its own, really. The casting of Evita was something that took place on a worldwide scale. It was a global casting, and people from everywhere auditioned for the role. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that I was going to win that part. I mean, it was just extraordinary to me, and the elation that I felt when I was told that I had got the part after something like 8 auditions was quite extraordinary. And so I think that in itself, I spoke to somebody only the other day, actually, over in Welwyn Garden City. I was doing a book signing for my new book that's out at the moment called Memories, which is a celebration of my 40 years on the West End stage, starting with Hair in 1968. And this person was saying to me, I remember where I was the day that it was announced that you had won the role of Eva Perón in Evita. And I just found that rather extraordinary, that somebody could remember such a thing. And why would they remember such a thing? But I think it was because the press thing had sort of rumbled on for a long time, for about a year probably, slowly gathering pace. And she said, I was on the tube and you were on the front page of the Evening Standard. And of course, I didn't know that because I was busy sort of wondering whether I'd got it or not, and wasn't really particularly out and about reading the Evening Standard. But a lot of people seem to remember where they were when, that headline hit the press. And I suppose the fact that I was English, rather than it having gone to an American, which I think looked as if it was on the cards at one point, and the fact that my name had sort of come up a few times over a few months. And it was a bit like like reality shows are now, that, the public sort of became involved in it, in the casting process, even though that they didn't actually have a hand in it. They had been following it along, I suppose, in the press. So I don't know. That's a very long-winded answer.
We're going to talk about musical theatre as well in a bit. Let's talk about you first, though. What were you like as a child?
Oh gosh, well, short. Nothing much has changed there. I always I still have very curly hair, so my hair was sort of frizzy. I always thought of myself as rather plain, and always looked several years younger than I actually am, which of course I now don't mind at all.
And you look tremendous. And I'll tell you what I noticed on your website, looking at the old album covers. You were marvellous in those days. You were a sex symbol.
Oh, hardly. I don't think I've ever thought of myself as a sex symbol. No way. But as one learns in life, a little bit of makeup and a good haircut and so on can do wonders for a girl. And so that's what I learned, I suppose, being in this profession. The way you look is quite important, and I've always had a love of clothes and fashion, and so I do take it sounds terribly old-fashioned to say this, but I suppose it comes from my mother, because she was a milliner, and indeed hats are still very important in my life. I can't go past a hat shop without going in and trying them on, or a hat department in a store. So my mum was very much into clothes and particularly hats. I think the first time I realised that I could sing and that I enjoyed it was at school. In those days, I don't know if they still do, but we used to have a morning assembly every day, which meant that the staff would stand on the stage in front of the gathered children in the assembly hall, and we would, have a religious service, I suppose. I went to a Church of England school, and we would say prayers and sing hymns. Something that I still love. I still have many favourite hymns, and I keep thinking I'm going to do an album of such at some point, sing an album of carols and hymns and things. I've just come up with that. That'd be a good idea, wouldn't it? Anyway, that's for later. But
now,
anyway,
because you said that on my programme, do I have the copyright?
No. Edit. Anyway, I'm twittering on. What was I saying? So, yeah, that's how I first knew I could sing, was in the assembly hall at school. And I was rather teased for it, actually, because like a lot of people, I think, they can't sing. And so a lot of my contemporaries used to send me up and tease me about it. And they'd say, "You go on, sing out, Vic, go on, girl, sing out, Louise," and all of that. And I was always teased for it. But I never minded it. I just thought, well, I don't care. I love to sing. And I did indeed really enjoy to sing. And I think my music teacher, Anne Hill, her name was, recognised that I had some kind of a voice, and she would give me the odd solo in the school choir things that we would do at end of term. So that's really how I discovered that I had a voice at all, and that I enjoyed to sing. So thanks to Anne Hill.
And what happened next? What was the moment when you thought, okay, if I get training and I have some discipline, this could be my future?
Well, I think it came after an end-of-term production directed by the music teacher Anne Hill, and it was a sort of a musical, a potpourri, if you like, all the hits of Mozart. And she had a vision, this woman, but it was a fantastic production, and it really was all the famous tunes that Mozart had ever written and had been, from various operas that he'd written. And I played the role of Susanna. And I had a marvellous aria to sing of lost love and, tragedy. I think this was the beginning of my career of singing all these songs that, are rather sad and depressing and emotional and tragic. And I remember quite clearly, I was probably about 13 or 14 years old, and it was my first acting role, I suppose, as well, in this musical. And while singing the song at the end of the aria, it was in the script that she had to break down in tears, and so, acting my socks off, there I was with all the parents sitting there watching their children in this end of term production. I broke down at the appropriate point in the aria, and I remember to this day hearing a gasp through the assembled parents, all sort of. And I think they all thought, oh, poor child, she's broken down and forgotten the words and she's crying, oh dear. And of course, I thought, well, didn't they know I was acting? Thankfully, I think my parents did. And it was after that my father had said to me, would you like to go to drama school? And I couldn't believe that somebody had asked me if I wanted to do something like that. I just thought, wow, that would just be the best thing in the world, to spend all my days singing and dancing and acting, and wouldn't that just be the best? Because I knew already at school that I loved to do these rehearsals for these end-of-term productions. I'd much rather be doing that than learning history and geography and maths in particular I hated. And would steal out of class and make up terrible fibs and tell the schoolmistress that I'd been given permission to go off and rehearse my end-of-term song, which was of course a pack of lies. But and I always managed to get away with it somehow. So I obviously was a natural actor, and that's how it all began. And of course, I took my father's offer up, thrilled as I was, and went off to Ada Foster's stage school. When I left school at the age of 15, I was just 16 when I went, and I did a 3-year drama students course there. A
unique performer who has been around in musical theatre as long as most people can remember, yet you're only 25, aren't you?
In my head. Yes, indeed. I don't feel any different from being 25 right now today, but sadly that isn't really the case. However, I think, as I'm saying in my concert tour that I'm doing to celebrate 40 years, oh my goodness, on the West End stage, I say to everybody, well, age is only a question of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
And let's talk about the song we just heard. It's probably your greatest number. Memory is such a touching and moving song. How do you balance the emotion of the song with getting through it yourself?
Well, of course, that's part of the art and craft of learning to sing songs. You have to invest your own life experience, and into the emotion of the song and tell the story. But at the same time, you have to remember a certain amount of technique. There's a technique involved as well. You can't just allow yourself to physically break down. You can't really completely go there to that place, otherwise you wouldn't be able to sing. Although I can remember a few years ago doing a concert tour in Scandinavia, and a fan of mine, he died, and his mother came in his place to see me in concert, and she came down to the front of the stage at the end of the concert in tears and said to me, you will sing Memory, won't you? You haven't sung it yet, because I obviously leave it to the end of the concert. And I said, of course. And she told me who she was and I knew what had happened, because she'd written to me. So I dedicated the song to the young man. It was the hardest thing to do, because to sing it after having made this dedication to him, because all I could think about was him and what this song was saying, and so it can be very difficult. And in fact, I'm often asked, I have been over the years, to sing at close friends' funerals and things like that. It's terrible. I have to decline. I've never been able to do it since this performance for this young fan, because I really did get completely and utterly choked up. I haven't got the wherewithal to do it. So it is difficult, and you have to learn how to be able to emote without actually physically breaking down yourself.
And as for a great song, is that the writing of the music or the words to the music, or does it have to be both?
For a song to be a great song, you have to have a wonderful melody and equally a wonderful lyric that lays completely in the right place of the tune. There's an art to that, of course, as well. Lyric writing is not as simple as everybody imagines it to be. For a good lyric, you need something that rhymes, I think, proper rhymes, and the important words that are telling the story through the lyric have to lay in the right place with the tune, on the tune. You can't have a big dramatic note with a word like "and" or a word like "but" or "to." It'd be meaningless. It has to have the important words of the lyric have to be with the important dramatic notes in the tune. So for a great song, you need both a good lyric and a good tune.
And when you're doing your concerts, which is the song you always look forward to the most to sing?
Oh, goodness. Well, of course, the ones that I was directed in shows, I'm really happy with, because I've been singing those for so many years now. They are like wearing a pair of comfortable old socks or a comfortable old pair of slippers, I know them so well. Again, excuse the pun, but when you know a song really, really well, and you know the lyric almost without having to think about it, then you are able to invest all your emotion and acting skills and thought processes into the performance, and that's really what every artist, I think, every singer looks forward to being able to do, is to be able to really go to a place that is indescribable. You can't describe really what it's like, and it's rare when the orchestra you're singing with and the audience that are listening and the sound and the lights and one's own voice all come together on that one performance. Those are magic performances, and they're very rare indeed, but when they come along, there is nothing in the world to beat that feeling and that experience. It's just fantastic.
And for you, is it still a thrill when you go and see a show and you find somebody who makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck? I think the first time I saw Idina Menzel in Wicked was one of those moments where you think you're in the presence of a star. Do you look forward to that?
Absolutely, it's fantastic. I've worked with a few people too that way back that I knew when I was in rehearsal, or watching the process of others find what they're doing, their parts, while their part they're playing, just while I was finding out what I was doing. It's quite interesting, and usually it's kind of pretty obvious as well. I mean, you can't really say exactly what it is, though, but you know it when you see it or when you hear it. And yes, it's an absolute thrill to be able to see a wonderful talent, young talent, staring you in the face, and hearing a wonderful voice, or just something extra special that you can't quite, I mean, I am able to put my finger on it now, because I know what I can see, that if somebody can sing well, has a wonderful and distinctive voice, and can act, and has an immediacy and a warmth or an appeal, something that hits you, comes across the footlights. It's so obvious, and I think I first noticed such things when I was producing Anything Goes, as well as playing the lead in it here in the West End in 1989, a wonderful Cole Porter musical. And because I was producing, which was the only way I could secure the job for myself, by the way. Not something I would choose to do, and haven't done since, actually, because you're always wearing different hats, and it's quite difficult and very time-consuming. But watching the audition, being part of the audition process, a bit like we do now on television, watching the reality shows, it's quite obvious, when people have a talent. And it's an absolute thrill.
Have you seen somebody recently who's really impressed you?
Well, I've heard the voice of somebody a couple of years back now, and it's taken a while. I've been a great champion of his. Josh Groban has the most amazing, beautiful, beautiful voice. And I heard him first and just thought, wow, that is... And it just, it just does something to me physically. I mean, it really is the most amazing voice. I have since seen him on stage in Chess, playing the role that, when I played it, opposite Tommy Korberg. He played the role that Josh Groban has recently just played at the Albert Hall. It's just the most amazing voice. I don't know about him quite as an actor. I'm not so sure on that level, because I've never seen him in a musical. I don't know that he's played in a musical. He may have played in Chess, I'm not sure, in the States. But the sound of his voice is, to me, something quite beautiful, and so that's been pretty exciting for me to sort of talk about him and know that what I felt about that voice very early on in his career. And whilst he's sold lots of millions of records, I'm sure, in the States, and is known in America, it's taken a little longer for him to establish himself over here in Europe, and I like to think that I've had a small hand in that.
Well, I think his version of You Raise Me Up, which was the first, was just the best.
Yeah, fantastic, and a wonderful album that he really does know how to tear at the heartstrings, and he has a wonderful instrument. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Let's play him while we're thinking about his instrument.
Oh, let's play that particular song.
And thank you for talking to us today, because you're ever so busy and you don't need to talk to riffraff like me.
Oh, come on now. I think you're the most wonderful interviewer, and it's an absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk about oneself.
And you mentioned earlier Drowsy Chaperone, which I saw you in, and I also saw on Broadway. A terrific musical, if ever there was one, and it didn't last, and it didn't succeed, and it was axed very quickly. Does your heart sink when you know you're in something that is very good, yet for some reason people don't turn up?
Yeah, it is rather depressing, I must say, because, whatever you're in, a lot of hard work goes into it, from the whole team, really, from the actors to the crew backstage, the lighting designers, the dress designers, the director, the choreographer, everybody. We all work so hard to make to get something to come to the stage for people's enjoyment. It was a very funny show, I thought, and very clever and witty. I don't think it was marketed in the right way, but then again, we were up against reality television, which is this new form that seems the country is engrossed with, and I can understand why, because it's fascinating television, but it sort of in some ways holds back new works, I think, because it's promoting mostly, and then certainly it was promoting revivals of famous musicals that everybody knows and loves, so they know when they're going to buy their very expensive ticket, which I can appreciate, they want to know what it is they're going to see and that they're going to enjoy it. And Drowsy Chaperone was a classic example of having a wonderful new musical that had an odd title. I don't think that helped it either. Nobody knew what it was about. It was a brand new piece, so nobody knew the music. But once those people were in the theatre, I've never heard a British audience laugh continuously for as long in one evening ever as they did when they did come to see the show. It was just a shame that it wasn't given a little longer to establish itself. It was just on the verge of it, but of course it was too costly to keep it running, so it had to close. So that's the sadness, is that sometimes new pieces of work don't get a chance.
And would you ever get involved in anything like I Do Anything or one of those Maria programmes?
No, don't think so. I'm an old-fashioned girl.
And are they writing shows like they used to?
That's a difficult question. Or not. Maybe it's not a difficult question. I don't think so, but that sounds rather... It's like all older people say, oh, wasn't like that in my day. So I think there may be a bit of that about how I feel about it. But I do think it's harder today to write something new that's going to really grab everybody's imagination, and it's so expensive to mount musical theatre, I'm talking about in particular. Everything is so expensive. So there are many more hurdles, I think there are today, than there were. I was very lucky in that the British musical renaissance, if you like, was through the 70s and the 80s into the 90s with Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, and that was a resurgence of the British musical, and I was so lucky to be part of that from the beginning almost. There isn't another Andrew Lloyd Webber, apparently, is there, yet at the moment? It doesn't seem so, anyway. Everything comes in cycles, and let's hope that someone of Andrew's calibre and Tim will resurge, will come out of somewhere. But it doesn't seem like that at the moment. There's a lot of... I think America has slightly a better way of being able to give the new young writers a chance. They manage to get stuff on off Broadway, and if it's any good and captures the imagination, then it seems to make its way to Broadway, as indeed happened with me and the project here, Drowsy Chaperone, which began life, in a very small way at somebody's wedding, and then went off Broadway, made it to Broadway, and came to London. Those are very rare, but they are happening, and there are some new things coming on, but not enough. So but the theatre's still alive and still full of lots of musicals on in the West End, maybe a little too many, because now there are lots of musicals on and perhaps not enough people to go around to see them all.
And the feeling then when you're in a hit, is there any better feeling in the world than that standing ovation at the end?
That isn't the reason I do it. It's lovely, of course, and that's the added bonus at the end of a performance. But for me, the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing is just that enjoyment of disappearing into playing another person, pretending to be somebody else. And that is what gives me the most pleasure, to be able to know that I've sung well for an evening and not hit any bum notes and remembered all the words, and to have been able to, as I say, disappear into the character. That is for me the true enjoyment, and that is the real reason I do it. and hope to continue to do so. And if anybody wants to come and see me on my tour next year, I'm playing all over the UK from the 16th of February right through to the 16th of March. And I'm going just about everywhere. So I hope everybody will come and celebrate with me, because that's what it is. It's a celebration of 40 years on the West End stage. Can't believe I'm actually saying that out loud.
And again, there's no greater compliment than somebody loving you, the person, than you, the character, because if they come out knowing your name and enjoying your songs, there's no greater compliment at all, is there?
I suppose not. I hadn't really thought of that. But no, it is a great compliment. And the fact that after all these years, people are still buying a ticket to come and see me, I really can't quite believe it. But we're going to record a live album of this 40th anniversary concert. I've never done a live album before, so it's another first.
More pressure, though. You've got to be good that night, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yikes, frightening. But we'll keep everything we've got crossed, and I'm sure it'll be a fun album to hear. And there are some new songs in this concert tour, so there'll be, it'd be nice for the fans and everyone to hear some new stuff.
Let's give out your website, because people will find out where you're going to be next year. It's www.elainepage.com, I think, isn't it?
I suppose so. I think so, yes. Sounds like it belongs to me, yes.
Elainepage.com. Thank you very much, EP, for talking to me. It's always a thrill to see you, whether it be live or listen to you on the radio or even in a theatre production. And really lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.